Grandma sat alone at the head of the table. She was still wearing the light blue cardigan she'd saved for special occasions. The birthday candles had already burned all the way down. The mashed potatoes had formed a crust. The roast had gone cold, and the balloons were starting to sink toward the floor. I stood frozen. She looked up and smiled like she'd been expecting me the whole time. There you are. I figured somebody would make it. My heart shattered. I walked over and hugged her. She laughed softly. Easy there, sweetheart. I'm old. Not made of glass. I pulled back and looked around. Where is everybody? She looked toward the empty chairs. Oh, they said something came up. They all had places to be. She said it so casually. Like she'd already convinced herself it wasn't personal. I knew better. People don't accidentally forget an 82-year-old woman's birthday. Not all on the same day. Not every single one of them. We cut the cheesecake together, skipped the forks, ate straight off the plates while watching an old Western on TV. Grandma smiled the whole time. But every now and then, I'd catch her staring toward the front door. Like maybe, just maybe, someone else would still show up. Around 10 that night, I helped her upstairs. As I tucked the blanket around her shoulders, she grabbed my hand. Her eyes suddenly became crystal clear. Not confused, not tired. Sharp, like she'd been waiting all day to tell me something. Ava, if anybody starts asking about this house, don't believe a word they say. Before I could ask what she meant, she closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep. I had no idea that by the next morning, someone would knock on that front door and change my family forever. The next morning, I woke up to somebody pounding on Grandma's front door. Not knocking. Pounding. I glanced at the clock. 8:17 a.m. Grandma was still asleep upstairs. I walked over and opened the door just enough to see who it was. A guy in a navy blazer stood there holding a clipboard. Behind him sat a shiny black SUV with a real estate company logo on the side. He smiled. Morning. I'm looking for Mrs. Eleanor Brooks. Why? I'm here for the property inspection. I blinked. The what? The inspection. He flipped through a folder. We're scheduled to take measurements today before closing. My stomach dropped. Closing? Yeah. He looked confused. The sale closes next Friday. I stared at him. I think you've got the wrong address. He checked the paperwork again. Nope. Same street, same house number, same owner. Everything matched. He smiled politely. Is Mrs. Brooks home? I crossed my arms. Who hired you? The listing agent. There has to be a mistake. He frowned. You didn't know the property was sold? Those words hit me like a freight train. Sold? Grandma never said a word about selling this house. She wouldn't. This place meant everything to her. I shook my head. Nobody's selling anything. The realtor looked uncomfortable. Well, I probably shouldn't be discussing private details. But according to our file, the family already accepted an offer. Family? What family? Before I could ask another question, I heard slow footsteps behind me. Grandma stood in the hallway wearing her robe. She looked from me to the realtor, then to the SUV parked outside. Her smile disappeared. She didn't say a single word. She just whispered, "So," they finally came. Every hair on my arm stood up. The realtor looked confused. Ma'am? Grandma ignored him. Instead, she looked straight at me. I told you they'd come. I gently helped her sit down in the living room. The realtor quietly apologized before walking back to his SUV. He promised he'd call the listing office to figure out the misunderstanding. As soon as he drove away, I locked the front door. Then I turned back toward Grandma. She was staring at an old family picture hanging above the fireplace. Without taking her eyes off it, she spoke. Ava, go to the hall closet. Top shelf. There's a green metal box. Bring it to me. I had no idea what was inside that box, but something told me. The answers I'd been looking for were waiting under that dusty old lid. I carried the old green metal box into the living room and set it on Grandma Eleanor's coffee table. It looked ancient. The paint was chipped. Rust covered the hinges. A tiny brass lock hung from the front, but the key was already taped underneath the handle. Grandma smiled faintly. Your grandpa always said nobody thinks to look underneath. I unlocked it. Inside were neat stacks of papers, old photographs, a leather notebook, several envelopes, and one thick file with a bright yellow sticky note, for Ava only. My pulse picked up. Grandma nodded. Open it. Inside was a folder filled with copies of property records, tax receipts, and handwritten notes. The very first page made my jaw drop. Someone had printed an online real estate listing. It was our house. Beautiful photos, an asking price, a description calling it a rare investment opportunity. The listing wasn't active anymore. Across the page, someone had stamped it in bold red letters. Pending sale. What the heck? I looked up. Grandma, when did you see this? She sighed. About 3 months ago. 3 months? You knew? She nodded slowly. I found one of those flyers in my mailbox. It had a picture of my own house on it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You didn't call anybody? Oh, sweetheart. I did. I called your mother. And? Grandma looked away. She told me not to worry. Said it was probably a computer mistake. That didn't sound like my mom. Or maybe it sounded exactly like her. Grandma reached for the leather notebook. I started writing everything down after that. Every phone call, every strange visitor, every conversation, every date, every time somebody asked whether she had considered moving into assisted living. The notebook was filled with months of detailed notes. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't memory loss. Grandma had been documenting everything. She looked me straight in the eyes. They thought I wasn't paying attention. But old doesn't mean stupid. I couldn't help smiling. You're tougher than all of us. She chuckled. I had to be. Then her smile faded. There's one more thing. She pointed toward another envelope buried underneath the paperwork. Unlike the others, this one had never been opened. Across the front, in Grandpa's handwriting, were 6 simple words. Open only if something feels wrong. A chill ran down my spine. Grandpa had passed away almost 8 years earlier. Slowly, I slid my finger beneath the seal. Neither of us had any idea that Grandpa had left behind a secret that would change everything we thought we knew about that house. My hands were shaking as I opened Grandpa's envelope. The paper inside had turned yellow with age. At the top, in his familiar handwriting, were 6 words that made my heart skip a beat. If you're reading this, I was right. I swallowed hard. Grandma stared at the fireplace. She couldn't bring herself to look at the letter. I started reading out loud. Dear Ava, if this letter ever gets opened, it means somebody is trying to take our home. And if that's true, they're probably pretending they're doing it out of love. Don't believe them. People change when money gets involved. I stopped reading. Goosebumps covered my arms. Grandpa had written this almost 8 years ago. How could he possibly know? Grandma let out a slow breath. He always worried about that house. I looked back at the letter. 3 months before I wrote this, I met with an attorney. Everything important is protected. The documents aren't here. They're somewhere nobody in the family would ever think to look. What documents? I asked. Grandma frowned. I honestly don't know. He never told me. He just smiled and said, Trust the right grandchild. I laughed softly. That sounds exactly like Grandpa. Before either of us could say another word, my phone rang. It was my mom. I answered. Hey. Her voice was unusually cheerful. Good morning, honey. How's Grandma? I looked across the room. She's fine. That's great. A short silence followed. Then she casually asked, So, did anyone stop by the house today? Every alarm bell in my head went off. Why? Oh, no reason. I was just curious. She was lying. I could hear it. I've gotta go, I said. Wait. She hesitated. If anyone asks questions, don't sign anything. That caught me off guard. Who's asking me to sign something? Another pause. I just meant, people can be pushy. She hung up before I could answer. I slowly lowered the phone. Grandma had heard every word. She whispered, She's scared. Of what? Grandma looked toward the front window. That you'll figure it out before they finish. Before I could ask what she meant, a pickup truck pulled into the driveway. I recognized it instantly. It belonged to my older brother, Logan. He climbed out carrying flowers in one hand, and a thick manila folder in the other. The flowers looked like an apology. The folder looked like business. And somehow, I already knew which one he actually came for. The screen door creaked open as my older brother, Logan, stepped inside. He forced a smile. Morning, Grandma. Grandma barely looked up from her cup of tea. Morning. The room felt ice cold. Logan handed her a bouquet of white lilies. I figured I'd stop by and check on you. Grandma smiled politely. That's sweet. But my birthday was yesterday. His smile disappeared. For a second, nobody said anything. Then he rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, I know. I've just been crazy busy. Grandma nodded. I noticed. Those 2 words hit harder than if she'd yelled. Logan cleared his throat and looked at me. Hey, Ava. Can we talk? I'd rather we all talk. His eyes drifted toward the manila folder tucked under his arm. It's kind of private. I crossed my arms. Then whatever's in that folder can stay private too. He sighed. It's not like that. He placed the folder on the coffee table. I just need Grandma to sign a couple papers. Every muscle in my body tensed. What papers? They're just insurance updates. Grandma quietly asked. Insurance? Yeah. He nodded too quickly. The company changed some forms. I reached for the folder before he could stop me. The first page wasn't insurance paperwork. It was a power of attorney document. The second page transferred financial authority. The third gave someone permission to manage Grandma's property. I looked up slowly. Seriously? Logan's face turned pale. Listen, it's not what it looks like. It looks exactly like you're trying to take control of Grandma's life. He raised both hands. Would you let me explain? No. You explain why you lied. His shoulders slumped. I didn't come up with this. My stomach tightened. Who did? He looked toward the floor. Mom. The room went silent. My business is falling apart, he admitted. I owe more money than I can pay back. I've been drowning for months. Mom said if we sold the house, everything would be okay. Grandma stared at him with tears in her eyes. You wanted my house. To fix your mistakes? Logan couldn't even look at her. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know what else to do. Grandma slowly pushed the folder back across the table. You should have asked for help, not tried to steal it. Logan's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in years, he looked like the scared little boy Grandma used to comfort after every nightmare. But before anyone could say another word, a black luxury SUV pulled into the driveway. Logan looked out the window, and his face lost every bit of color. Oh no. They're here. I frowned. Who? He whispered only 2 words. Mom's lawyer. Logan looked like he'd seen a ghost. His face went completely white as the black SUV rolled to a stop in front of Grandma's house. The driver's door opened. A woman in a charcoal gray suit stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. She walked up the porch with calm, confident steps. No rush, no smile. Just business. She knocked twice. I opened the door before she had a chance to knock again. Can I help you? She adjusted her glasses. I'm looking for Mrs. Eleanor Brooks. Who's asking? She handed me a business card. Rebecca Lawson, attorney at law. I represent your mother, Diane Brooks. My stomach sank. Grandma slowly walked over behind me. Rebecca smiled politely. Mrs. Brooks, it's nice to finally meet you. Grandma didn't smile back. I wish I could say the same. The lawyer nodded, clearly expecting resistance. I'd like to discuss the property. There won't be any discussion. Grandma folded her arms. This house isn't for sale. Rebecca remained calm. According to the documents my office received, your family has already agreed to move forward. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My family doesn't get to decide that. Rebecca looked at me. And you are? Ava. Her granddaughter. Rebecca flipped open her briefcase. I understand the situation is emotional, but everyone involved believes selling the home is in Mrs. Brooks' best interest. Grandma laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh people let out when they're completely disappointed. My best interest? She looked directly at the lawyer. Has anyone bothered asking me what I want? Rebecca hesitated. No, but your daughter explained that your memory has been declining. I stepped forward. That's a lie. Grandma remembers everything. Birthdays, anniversaries, phone calls, even conversations from months ago. Rebecca looked surprised. That's not what I was told. I grabbed Grandma's notebook from the coffee table and handed it over. Read it. Every phone call, every visitor, every date, every detail. Rebecca quietly flipped through page after page. The longer she read, the more serious her expression became. Finally, she closed the notebook. Then she looked straight at Grandma. Mrs. Brooks, has anyone ever asked you to sign papers you didn't fully understand? Grandma answered without hesitation. Twice. Rebecca frowned. Did you sign them? Grandma smiled. I pretended to. The room fell silent. Even Logan looked confused. You pretended? I asked. Grandma nodded. I signed my maiden name. Not my legal signature. Rebecca's eyes widened. If that's true, those documents may not be legally valid. Before anyone could react, Rebecca's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Diane Brooks, she answered. Hello? The room stayed completely quiet. After a few seconds, Rebecca's expression changed. Rebecca slowly placed her phone back into her purse. Nobody spoke. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed louder than usual. Finally, she looked at Grandma Eleanor. I think you deserve to know exactly what was just said. Grandma nodded. Go ahead. Rebecca took a deep breath. Your daughter assumed you had already signed the paperwork. Logan's eyes widened. What? She asked if everything was ready for closing next Friday. He shook his head. No, Rebecca continued. When I told her you refused to sign anything, she said, it doesn't matter. Mom doesn't even remember what she signs anymore. The room fell silent. Grandma looked down at her hands. Not angry, not surprised, just heartbroken. After a few seconds, she whispered, so that's what they really think of me. I walked over and wrapped my arm around her shoulders. They're wrong. She smiled sadly. I know. Rebecca reached into her briefcase and pulled out another folder. This is everything my office received. I flipped through it. Property transfer forms, medical evaluations, power of attorney paperwork. Then one page caught my attention. A doctor's letter. It claimed Grandma suffered from advanced memory problems. I frowned. This isn't her doctor. Grandma looked at the name. I've never even met this man. Rebecca nodded. That's what worries me. She handed me another sheet. The medical address is over 200 miles away. Logan leaned closer. My mom never drove Grandma that far. Rebecca quietly said. Exactly. Someone had submitted medical paperwork from a doctor Grandma had never seen. The more we looked, the worse it got. There were signatures that didn't match, dates that made no sense, even addresses with spelling mistakes. Whoever prepared these documents had been sloppy. Rebecca closed the folder. If this goes to court, these papers probably won't survive 5 minutes. For the first time all day, I felt hope. Maybe we could actually stop this. Then Grandma slowly stood up. There's one thing I haven't told any of you. Everyone looked at her. About 6 months ago, your grandfather's attorney came to visit. I blinked. I thought Grandpa's lawyer retired. He did. But before he retired, he left me something for the day I stopped trusting my own family. She slowly walked toward the staircase. There's a locked drawer in my bedroom. Inside is a small wooden box. She looked straight at me. Ava, bring it downstairs. As I climbed the stairs, my heart was pounding. I had no idea what was inside that little box. But somehow, I knew whatever Grandpa had hidden all those years ago was about to turn this entire fight upside down. I hurried upstairs 2 steps at a time. Grandma's bedroom looked exactly the way it had my entire life. The faded quilt, the antique dresser, Grandpa's old cowboy hat still hanging on the wall. I walked over to the nightstand and pulled open the top drawer. Locked, just like Grandma said. I reached underneath the drawer and felt around. My fingers brushed against a tiny piece of tape. There it was, a small brass key. I unlocked the drawer and slowly pulled it open. Inside sat a polished walnut box, no bigger than a shoebox. Across the lid, a brass plate read, "For Eleanor, and only when the time is right." I carried it downstairs. Grandma rested her hand on top of the box for a long moment before opening it. Inside were 3 things: a folded letter, a flash drive, and a sealed envelope labeled County Records. Rebecca frowned. This doesn't look like ordinary estate paperwork. Grandma smiled. Your grandfather never did anything the ordinary way. She handed me the letter first. I unfolded it carefully. Ellie, if this box is open, then someone has chosen greed over family. Don't be angry. Just be ready. I kept reading. Years ago, I moved this property into a protected family trust. The trust cannot be sold unless the trustee approves it. I stopped. The trustee? Grandma looked at me. Keep reading. My heart pounded. After Eleanor, the trustee becomes our granddaughter. Ava Mitchell. I stared at the page. What? Logan's mouth literally fell open. Rebecca reached for the documents inside the envelope. She scanned the first page. Then another. Then another. Finally, she looked up with a shocked expression. This is real. She flipped to the signature page. The trust was legally recorded years ago. I could barely breathe. So, the house can't be sold? Rebecca slowly smiled. Not without the trustee's approval. And right now? She looked directly at me. That's you. Logan collapsed onto the couch. Oh my God. My mom has no idea. Grandma quietly laughed for the first time in days. Your grandfather always believed people reveal who they truly are when money is involved. Then Rebecca plugged the flash drive into her laptop. A single video appeared on the screen. The timestamp showed it had been recorded 7 years earlier. Grandpa smiled into the camera. If you're watching this, it means somebody ignored my warnings. He leaned closer. And I know exactly who it is. Everyone in the room froze, because Grandpa was about to name names. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Grandpa's face filled Rebecca's laptop screen. He looked older than I remembered. Gray beard, flannel shirt, coffee mug in one hand, that same calm smile he always had. He looked straight into the camera. If this video's playing, I'm probably long gone. Grandma quietly wiped away a tear. Grandpa chuckled. Don't cry, Ellie. You know I hate when you cry. For just a second, Grandma actually smiled. Then Grandpa's expression turned serious. I didn't make this recording because I expected the worst. I made it because I knew human nature. I've seen what money does to families. He leaned forward. If anyone is trying to pressure Eleanor into selling this house, they're doing it for themselves. Not for her. Rebecca glanced toward Logan. He couldn't even lift his head. Grandpa continued. I've watched certain conversations for years. I've heard people say this land is just an old house. But it isn't. It's a promise. A promise I made to your grandmother the day we bought it. The room stayed completely silent. Then Grandpa smiled again. And Ava. I nearly jumped. He had said my name. If you're watching this, so it means I picked the right person. I felt tears burning in my eyes. I know you'll protect this family, even if the family doesn't deserve it. Rebecca quietly paused the video. There are still 20 more minutes. Before anyone could press play again, the front door slammed open. Mom stormed inside. Her face was bright red. Behind her was Dad. What is going on? Mom demanded. Her eyes landed on Rebecca. You had no right to come here. Rebecca calmly stood up. Actually, I had every right. Mom looked around the room. Then she noticed the trust documents spread across the coffee table. Her expression changed instantly. She froze. No, she whispered. Where did you get those? Grandma answered. Your father. Mom's face lost all its color. Those were supposed to be destroyed. Nobody said a word. She realized exactly what she'd admitted. Rebecca slowly closed her briefcase. Thank you. I don't think I'll need any further explanation. Mom looked horrified. I didn't mean... You absolutely did, Rebecca interrupted. You just admitted you knew these documents existed, and that someone intended to make them disappear. Dad buried his face in his hands. Logan looked ready to cry. Mom stood there speechless. Then Grandma quietly stood up. For the first time, there was no sadness in her eyes, only disappointment. She looked directly at her daughter and said, I've been waiting months for you to tell me the truth. You just did. Nobody said a word. The entire living room felt frozen. Mom stood there staring at Grandpa's trust documents, like she'd just seen a ghost. Dad slowly lowered himself into a chair. He looked exhausted, defeated. Grandma broke the silence first. Diane, I've only got one question. Mom swallowed hard. Did you ever love this house? Nor did you only love what it was worth? Mom's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Grandma nodded slowly. Then tell us. The whole truth. For several seconds, Mom couldn't even speak. Then she sat down. I was drowning. She looked at Logan. Your brother's business wasn't the only thing falling apart. She took a shaky breath. We refinanced our own house 2 years ago. The interest rate exploded. We fell behind. Dad quietly added, we borrowed money we couldn't pay back. Mom continued. Then the medical bills started. I didn't know what else to do. So when someone offered nearly $8, $100,000 for this. Property. I saw it as our only way out. I stared at her. You never even asked Grandma. Mom looked ashamed. I knew she'd say no. Grandma's eyes watered. So you decided my answer didn't matter. Mom couldn't deny it. Rebecca quietly spoke. Financial problems don't justify fraud. They especially don't justify taking advantage of an elderly person. Mom nodded. I know. Logan finally looked up. This is my fault too. Everyone turned toward him. I kept asking Mom for help. I kept saying I needed money. I never asked where it would come from. His voice cracked. I should have stopped this. Grandma slowly walked over. She rested her hand on Logan's shoulder. I can forgive mistakes, but I can't forgive lies. Logan broke down crying. I'm sorry, Grandma. I was scared. I know. She hugged him anyway. Then she stepped back. But apologizing doesn't erase what happened. Rebecca cleared her throat. There's something else you all should know. She pulled a document from her briefcase. This morning, I officially notified the title company. The sale has been canceled. Nobody said anything. Rebecca continued. The buyers have already backed out. The property is legally protected. And based on everything I've seen today, it isn't going anywhere. For the first time in weeks, Grandma looked peaceful. She smiled at Grandpa's old photograph sitting above the fireplace. You kept your promise. Then she looked at me. And now? It's your turn. I nodded. I won't let anyone take this home. Not now. Not ever. But none of us realized. The biggest surprise Grandpa left behind hadn't even been opened yet. Rebecca reached into the wooden box one last time and pulled out a sealed envelope labeled. Rebecca carefully held the final envelope in her hands. Across the front, Grandpa's handwriting read, Open this only after the truth comes out. Nobody reached for it. The room was silent. Grandma nodded. Go ahead. Rebecca slowly broke the seal and unfolded a single sheet of paper. She smiled. This one's addressed to the whole family. I leaned closer as she began reading. If you're hearing this letter, then the lies are finally over. Good, because families can't heal while they're still pretending. Grandpa's words hit every one of us. Diane, Mom immediately looked down. I've loved you since the day you were born. Nothing will ever change that. But love doesn't mean protecting you from the consequences of your choices. Mom quietly wiped away tears. Rebecca continued. Logan, being desperate doesn't make you a bad man. Choosing dishonesty does. My brother buried his face in his hands. Grandpa wasn't angry. That somehow made it hurt even more. Then Rebecca smiled softly. Ava, if you're reading this, you probably tried to save everyone before you saved yourself. I laughed through my tears. That sounds about right. Don't carry this family on your shoulders forever. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. The room stayed completely still. Then came the final paragraph. This house was never meant to make anyone rich. It was built to keep this family together. If it ever becomes the reason you're tearing each other apart, then you've already forgotten why we bought it. Rebecca lowered the letter. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Mom stood up. She slowly walked over to Grandma. I'm sorry. No excuses. No lies. I betrayed your trust. Grandma looked into her daughter's eyes. I believe you're sorry. Mom started crying. But, Grandma continued gently, trust isn't repaired with words. It's repaired with time. Mom nodded. I'll earn it. Logan stepped beside her. So will I. Dad quietly added. We all will. Grandma smiled for the first time all day. Then let's stop talking about money and start acting like a family again. For the first time in months, everyone gathered around the same dining table. No arguments, no paperwork, no lawyers, just family. The same table where Grandma had sat alone on her birthday. This time, every chair was finally filled. But before we could sit down, Rebecca smiled and said, There's one last document everyone needs to sign. Everyone looked at her in surprise. It isn't legal paperwork, she said. It's Grandpa's final request. Rebecca smiled as she pulled one final document from Grandpa's wooden box. It isn't a legal contract, she said. It's more like a promise. She placed it in the middle of the dining table. At the top, Grandpa had written, The Brooks family promise. Grandma laughed softly. That sounds exactly like him. Rebecca began reading. If you're sitting together when this letter is opened, then maybe there's still hope. Money comes and goes. Houses get old. Land changes hands. But family is the one thing you can't replace once you lose it. The room fell silent. Grandpa's words filled every corner of the house. I'm asking each of you to make one promise. Never let greed sit at this table again. Mom quietly wiped away another tear. Dad reached over and held her hand. Logan stared at the wooden tabletop, unable to say a word. Rebecca slid the paper toward Grandma. You don't have to sign this. Grandma smiled. Oh, I already have. She turned the page over. Her signature was dated nearly 7 years earlier, right beneath Grandpa's. I couldn't help smiling. He planned everything. Grandma chuckled. He always did. One by one, we each picked up a pen. Dad signed first, then Mom. She paused for a long moment before writing her name. Logan signed next. His hand shook the entire time. Finally, I signed my name at the bottom. Not because a piece of paper could fix our family, but because I believed we deserved one last chance. Rebecca carefully placed the document back inside the wooden box. I think my work here is done. She smiled at Grandma. Your husband was one smart man. Grandma looked toward Grandpa's old photograph hanging above the fireplace. He wasn't just smart. He believed people could change. A few months later, the house looked alive again. The porch had fresh paint. The flower beds were blooming. The broken fence Grandpa always meant to fix was finally repaired. Every Sunday, our family gathered for dinner. No business, no arguments, no talk about money. Just stories, laughter, and homemade pie. Logan rebuilt his business honestly. Mom and Dad slowly paid off their debts. It wasn't easy, but they did it without taking a single dollar from Grandma. As for me, I never became the owner of the house. I became something far more important, its protector. When Grandma passed away peacefully 3 years later, she left this world in the home she loved most. Exactly where Grandpa had always promised she'd stay, and every time I unlocked that old front door, I remember something Grandpa once told me as a little girl. A house is built with lumber. A home is built with love. And if you ever have to choose between money and family, choose family. Every single time. My name's Ava Mitchell, and I was 31 years old when I found out that sometimes the people who smile with you at Thanksgiving are the exact same people who'll stab you in the back for a paycheck. I wish I was exaggerating. I'm not. This whole thing started on a Saturday in October. My grandma, Eleanor Brooks, was turning 82. She'd been talking about her birthday dinner for weeks. Every time I'd call, she'd say the same thing. Honey, don't work too hard. Just make sure you're here Saturday. I promised her I would. Grandma still lived in the same farmhouse outside Maple Creek. Ohio she'd shared with Grandpa for almost 50 years. Every inch of that place held a memory. The porch swing Grandpa built, the apple tree they planted after their wedding, the tiny scratches on the kitchen wall where she'd measured every grandkid's height. That house wasn't just wood and bricks. It was our family's history. At least, that's what I thought. I worked weekends as an ER nurse in Columbus. My shift ended a little after 4. I grabbed a bouquet of sunflowers from a roadside market, picked up Grandma's favorite caramel cheesecake, and hit the highway. About halfway there, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I answered through Bluetooth. Hey, Mom. You still going over there? Something about her voice sounded off. Yeah. There was a pause. You don't really have to. I frowned. What? We already stopped by earlier. Everyone's been busy. I'm sure your grandma understands. Busy? It was her birthday. What time did everybody leave? Another pause. Oh, we didn't stay long. That answer didn't sit right. Not even close. Something in my gut told me to drive faster. 45 minutes later, I turned onto Grandma's gravel driveway. The porch light was still glowing. The dining room lights were on. Through the front window, I could see the table. 8 dinner plates, 8 wine glasses, 8 folded cloth napkins. Every single chair, empty.